Within 2 years of successful Kickstarter, Elite Dangerous was released in 2014, 10 years ago, featuring not only staples of the space sim genre, the open world, spaceship piloting, trading, combat, and more, but managed to do nearly every aspect to such a high degree of quality that anything before felt like a child's toy. The impact of original Elite in '84 and now in modern day with Dangerous, the 4th game in the series, serves as an exemplary example of excellence of how to create a great space game, and doing anything less feels like cutting corners. In these 10 years, however, the road was not so pleasant for the game, with incredible ideas being executed, sometimes even extremely poorly. And today, there's a lot of good and bad to say about Elite Dangerous. So come with me to this decade-long journey to reminisce about the incredible and some disappointing things as Elite Dangerous celebrates its 10-year anniversary. 2014, December 16th. Elite Dangerous releases after 2 years in development after successful Kickstarter in late 2012. I think to truly appreciate what Frontier developers of the day managed to accomplish, we must glance over the first few early videos. This is how Elite looked in 2013. Yep, that was all that there was. Some ship models, bad lighting, and no fog effects with basic asteroids, and of course borderline prehistoric space pupil lasers. But how did we even get to this point? Well, that's mostly thanks to this man. No, not that one, this one! In 2012, Roberts was looking for investment and partners for Star Citizen before announcing that fateful crowdfunding campaign. As it happens, one of such partners must have been Braben. However, having his own space baby to put in the oven, seems Braben decided to be a friendly competitor instead. Now, you can say whatever you want, but this kind of friendly synergy that both Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous created nearly overnight rejuvenated interest in the space sim game genre. While Star Citizen was the lightning in the bottle that excited everyone, Elite was the actual substance that proved that this kind of game can be made. And not just by one company either. And the one thing that the fanboys of either side is often missing is that neither Elite Dangerous or Star Citizen would be where they are without the other one. So join your greasy space dad hands and appreciate each other, okay? But anyways, you remember that first gameplay footage here, right? Well, that was the work of the dev team in the first few months. However, skip a few months later and Braben talks about the damage models of ships, something that Star Citizen executes quite well these days. For Elite Dangerous, on the other hand, this remains as a personal albatross, nothing more than a tech demo that exists in-game, sure, but is nothing more than a remnant of the feature presentation that was abandoned, sadly, and today is nothing more than the cosmetic for one ship only, the Anaconda. During this time, unlike, say, Star Citizen, the videos and updates that Frontier released were even more amateurish and even more conceptual, with just a developer sitting in front of a green screen and occasionally concept art would be thrown in your face. This, however, changed around the October of 2013, with the first gameplay CGI trailers, and yes, they were not real gameplays, snapshots or anything like that, but a real CGI trailer. They even showcased how they made it. But those looked rather cool and doable too. Then, only a couple of months later in December, a full year after the very first video, we get to see what basically Elite Dangerous ended up being. It utterly amazes me how much and how pinpoint precise these artists and coders managed to craft and capture what the game would pretty much end up being, let alone in such a short amount of time. That utterly immersive tone and feeling that to this day remains as the greatest aspects of the game, and that was captured in what, only years worth of development? It's like these developers looked in all possible futures and extrapolated the perfect game design document to craft one of the most immersive games in the world. It almost feels like cheating. And so for the next year, more polish was applied until the release date of 2014. However, it was not all smooth sailing. Now, first off, unlike Star Citizen, which was 100% fan-funded, it was speculated heavily that Frontier used Kickstarter as a more of a proving grounds for the interest in the project, like Elite Dangerous, for larger investments from outside sources to cover the development. Because Kickstarter's $2 million for funding something like Elite Dangerous doesn't kinda seem real, but if it is, wow! Second, similarly to Star Citizen, Elite started promising minor but still pay-to-win packages, be them starting ships or starting credits being better than the normal ones. Now clearly I don't like it, but I can understand that, yeah, it's Kickstarter, it's crowdfunding. Still don't like it though. Third, lifetime expansion passes. These were promised for future any and all expansions. Basically, already, Frontier was planning to dump a bunch of paid expansions as a business model plan. Well, it's not bad in and of itself. The saying, best laid plans of mice and men, applies here a lot. And the fact that Elite has received only 2 expansions in this time tells you pretty much how valuable it was.
We are planning to reserve, as a percentage, tiny areas of the galaxy for future expansion. We don't even know yet what we're going to put there, but it allows us to put whole new exciting things to be discovered at a later date.
Yeah, these zones still exist in Elite as unknown permit-locked spheres, like for example Horsehead Nebula, and none of them have been unlocked to this day, for God knows what fucking reason. And then, number 4, the biggest controversy of Kickstarter days, the offline mode. Well, originally the game was a single-player offline mode like the previous games. The new big thing at the time was multiplayer. Yeah, Frontier was living in the past a little bit much, but regardless, they also promised multiplayer. And as it happens, they later had to cut off the offline mode for the multiplayer to actually work in the first place. Now, yes, it's a dick move promising offline mode and then going back on your word, even though it is technically possible. Fact is, Elite wanted to be a live service game, and how can you have live service, well, with markets, missions, and people running around with mods and syncing all that up with the offline mode, right? So, like Braben says in 2014, last week Frontier Chief David Braben said an offline version of the game would be unacceptably limited and static compared to the dynamic, ever-unfolding experience we're delivering. Oh, and before anything, this is not the reason why Elite Dangerous has open, private, and solo game modes. This is mostly to do with the fact that the player protection system in-game is really bad, and this is the only workaround for griefing. And number 5, who can forget?
Another thing that we are doing, again down the line, is that you will be able to walk around inside your ship, you'll be able to get out of your ship, walk around inside space stations, other vehicles, all of that sort of thing.
This in particular feels like a spit in the face when Odyssey released. And after that we had other minor things like...
There'll be lightning strikes. The world is a very, very interesting world. And it would be beautiful to fly in amongst those clouds with spaceships. So one of the technologies we've been looking at is how do we do that? How do we generate really rich cloudscapes? So it's early days yet, but here is an example of such a piece of technology. What we're seeing here is, again, using procedural techniques, generating clouds on the fly. And you can...
That looks really cool! Even back then! The clouds that No Man's Sky these days have. Yeah, it's about the same as that. By the way, if you didn't know. That's cool!
Now, one of the questions people have been asking a lot about, for example, is landing on planets. Now, yes, we're going to have landing on planets, but there is a lot of detail that's really important. So, for example, if you were to then have a follow-up question, what will be there when you land on the planet? That's what's been concerning us a lot. If you imagine every planet, when you get down to the surface, is just a differently coloured height map, that would be very, very disappointing, even with lovely atmospheric effects. What I want to see down on the planet is interesting things, cities, scapes, even animals, life, trees, being a big game hunter, all of the things that we've been very, very excited about for a long time.
And then there's the old developer promise I had to dig through the internets to find to confirm of making the game playable in some kind of fashion after the servers are closed one day. You know, the game preservation clause. And let's not forget, Elite Dangerous is in the very same boat. Just that it has more players, and apparently an end-of-life plan promised from the days of Kickstarter. Or is it? So then, according to this end-of-life promise from days of old, Mr. Braben and his company stated in Elite Dangerous newsletter number 50 this. Could the server code be publicly released someday when the servers are shut down? Yes, this is something we would do if for whatever reason we cannot keep the game going. However, this is old and super hard to find, and I trust it as much as I trust the current leadership at Frontier. And since developers don't want to talk to a prick like me anymore, it seems there is no way to confirm or deny this claim either. But putting all the dreams and implied sales pitches that border on broken promises aside, in December of 2014, Elite Dangerous released as a fully playable, optimized, finished and designed game. Sure, it was grindy, but it had full trading, combat, exploration gameplays, an open world that has yet to be beaten in sheer scale and size. Even though it was 99% empty. 2015 is where everyone was properly playing the game, and what a game it was. Flight mechanics felt realistic, yet not overly real. As in, there was a speed limit at the top end and friction in space. Not a fully Newtonian physics like the past two games had. And trust me, that's a good thing. Anyone who claims that full Newtonian physics for space sims is a great idea, please punch them in the face and force them to play the second and the third Elite games. They will learn. Then there was combat as a whole, with simplistic looking yet extremely depthful mechanics, which again were designed and implemented and finished in 2 fucking years. Then trading, very simple and incredibly cool and cathartic gameplay that paired with actually needing to manually land only increased the gameplay difficulty and realism, and honestly fun with it. Now that's an achievement. And of course, the open world.
Earth. How big is the universe? How big is the map? No way. No way. You do not have the entire galaxy.
Yeah, there is really no describing the utter amazement of how open this open world is. Now, as for the things to do in it, yeah, well now that's a lot shorter and smaller list, to a point that it almost gets embarrassing. Hence Elite is often called mile wide, inch deep. Even so, thanks to Elite Dangerous, third crucial gameplay for space sims was created. No longer just going and looking at places, but actually scanning planets and getting their information actually provides you with something, most notably credits, making it just as valid source of income as trading or combat. Oh, and in case you think that Elite's open world is just faking it.
We're talking about progress.
Sure.
One of the questions we get asked a lot, almost all the time, is how much of the galaxy have we explored?
Yes, we do always get that question.
An animation actually to show you how much percentage is. So are you ready? Adam, could you roll us the percentage?
Yeah, bit of drum roll in the chat. Here we go.
Oh,
Big number.
big number.
6%.
Oh. Oh, right. Well, there you go. 0.06% of the galaxy has actually been explored in 10 years.
400 billion star systems with even more celestial bodies inside them. This is the power of procedural generation that Braben talked about those very early days.
Now, there are plenty of more things we can do, from the layouts of planet surfaces, all that sort of thing. So I think that the richness we can bring to the world with procedural generation, still as a way of helping what artists can do, is very exciting.
But as for me, that year, as I was watching a couple of weird videos on YouTube while editing some PlanetSide 2 videos that I was making at the time, one of them grabbed me. It was a simple gameplay video, no edits, no dress up, just a guy showing off how he pilots his ship in space from the cockpit, like, your typical flight simulator or a racing sim. But there was more. He was pressing individual buttons, and there were settings? He looks at his cargo bay to check if everything is there and opens another menu, but that menu is in game space. Then looks up at the star system and proceeds to jump and deliver his load. To me, that was amazing. I was immediately fascinated by the design and experience. So around the April of 2015, I buy my first ever game for, money, and it's Elite Dangerous. And what a purchase that was, and what a journey it would lead me into. I had never imagined, which is kind of funny. I didn't pick up the game for making videos, it was just to play something off hours while not shooting Planet Mans. And you know, to this day, that immersion and experience that I speak of piloting a spaceship and feeling immersed into the pilot's seat, still remains, though it might have been a bit buried under the layers of kinda crap today. It's still there! As I played around and learned to grind, Elite during 2015 received the content that was held off from the release. Every month or two there would be a small but content containing update releasing. 1.1 adds community goals, a kind of a week-long missions that give everyone a little bit more money on its conclusion depending on their contribution. Then 1.2 adds 2 new ships, Furtherlands and Vulture. A new feature also called Wings gets added, a squad-based mechanic that allows you to play with a friend. And for content creators, camera mode gets added. Then 1.3 adds 3 new ships, Imperial Courier and both Diamondback Scout and Explorer. But most notably, Power Play. Yep, it looked pretty nice, but boy oh boy was it a piece of shit. Then 1.4, another new ship, Imperial Eagle, and a new game mode, CQC. See, Frontier at the time was trend chasing what other companies did a lot, i.e. in this case, attempting esports minigames/tournaments. So the abomination that was CQC came into being. Devoid of gameplay, features, or anything remotely interesting. No wonder it was dead on arrival. Oh, but did you know Frontier posted a $100,000 tournament for CQC, and a few months later they had to cancel the whole thing due to Horizon's growing pains. Oh, and speaking of that, 1.5 released alongside the first ever expansion, Season Pass, the promised whatever the fuck, called Horizons. The free update came with impressive new ships, Asp Scout, Viper 4, Corvette, Cutter and Keelback. But Horizons? Oh boy. A developer comes on stage and tells you they will be releasing this expansion for a game.
Alright, so we know expansions, big updates that use the base game to build upon. It's usually slightly smaller in the size of a new game, both in content, story, and features. Now, we had an innovative idea. What if we make only a small part of it, then sell it at a full expansion price, and promise to deliver all other parts later?
But can you tell us what will be in this expansion?
Maybe what they will tell you? Now buy it!
What the fuck was that? Frontier yet again decided to trend chase with the shittiest practices of the industry. I present you pre-ordering unknown content for unknown amount of updates for unknown amount of delivery time for a full game price on a promise.
Aye bruv, trust me bruv!
Now for more detail, go check out my hypercritical reviews on this, but this is what it was, and oh boy, this season pass bullshit really came back to bite even Frontier in the ass. However, for now, the launch of Horizons turned out to be a great success. Planetary landings in 2015, a whole 6 months before Star Citizen even showcased their own version, let alone giving it to players on public. And to a certain degree, Elite felt like it was ahead quite a bit, and hell, arguably spearheading the whole genre.
So, for example, if you were to then have a follow-up question, what will be there when you land on the planet? That's what's been concerning us a lot. If you imagine every planet, when you get down to the surface, is just a differently coloured height map, that would be very, very disappointing, even with lovely atmospheric effects.
And yeah, that's exactly what the planets ended up being, and to date arguably still very much are. And when you remember that there are over 400 billion of them, I don't need to tell you that boring is exactly how it feels. But even so, with Horizons you could land on 49% of all the planets, only the lifeless and atmosphere-less ones. But hey, it was new back then, and of course, you could still land on the planets in a very seamless way and even drive around with a buggy, doing missions, like normal gameplay. No wonder Elite Dangerous broke player records on Steam thanks to Horizons. Well, also the fact that Elite Dangerous wasn't first on the Steam when it launched, but that's a whole different story. Even today, very few games seem to be able to make a game where you don't need to load a single fucking room with a loading screen, let alone a whole planet with no loading screens, manual landings, and more on a technical scale, circular gravity. Hell, this kind of tech achievement seems to be unobtainium, especially for companies with massive budgets and acclaim. Right, Starfield? Right, Bethesda? You bunch of fucking hacks! 2016 saw the continuation of Horizon's Season Pass with promised 2.1 Engineers Update. This introduced Engineering Gambletron, I shit you not, that in turn of a few materials collected by doing different types of gameplay produced unique, and when I say unique I mean RNG rolled upgrades between certain values. As an idea, this upgrade system expanded and improved your weapons, utilities and systems of your ship from a few 10,000 variations with simple module outfitting to few million, if not billion of unique builds. Engineers offered unparalleled customization and variety, but along with that came the incredible power creep. So to this day, I, the biggest asshole and critic of Elite Dangerous, will state firmly, despite all the cool shit, engineering ruined Elite Dangerous gameplay balance. And I've discussed all the how, what and whys about it, and if you want to learn more, do check the links down below. But the reality was simple. You wanted the game to become easier and also be on the same playing field as others? Buying Horizons was now necessary. See, the original Elite Dangerous game balance was actually fairly decent in 2014, so it surprises me immensely that likely the same game designers decided to utterly ruin it with this update. Now, see, Power Fantasy is one thing, but this is bullshit and remains bullshit to this day. Remove engineers! It's important to mention that this year, a community would launch its biggest ever exploration expedition, The Distant Worlds. While not the first of its kind, these expeditions became a massive part, reaching as far back as the start of the game, thanks to just how massive the open world was. That's how impactful exploration became in space games, thanks to Elite Dangerous and its dedicated community.
The galaxy calls, a chant from the stars to come live in the core. We'll jump together, my friends. Every flash of light's another hand to carry the weight. Jump on board, enter those cars. Or will the wandering souls come and lend a hand for the distant world?
Then 2.2 came with a story-based update called Guardians, introducing remains of the long-deceased second alien race humanity would find, called the titular Guardians. There was a kind of a story mission that, frankly speaking, was a pathetic attempt at exposition, but hey, it was also the best story we got up until then. Oh, but speaking of that, I haven't mentioned the story itself. Well, Elite, to my horror, even today seems to be allergic to any and all forms of presentation. See, there is a good amount of cool story and even more lore of the game, yet it's hidden away almost in spite of the player. I even remember visiting LaveCon and asking a few developers face-to-face about questlines. You know, something that would show the player the story of the game. But what I got in turn was weird looks as if the concept of presenting and showing the story was a foreign fucking concept to the man. That was one of the then game designers. So yeah, Elite does not have a story because developers don't want to tell you about it. And only like turbo nerds like, you know, Canon, with too much free time on their hands, would read the fucking beacons in middle of space in middle of nowhere and maybe piece together some kind of narrative. As for everyone else, I think this image perfectly describes Elite Dangerous' story. The update itself brought module storage, where you could store all your engineered gear, but the storage itself was way too damn small anyways. But hey, at least you didn't need to buy fleets of anacondas to house them in anymore. Oh, and passenger missions got added as some kind of exploration-based missions. And along with them, the biggest ship in the game, at least hitbox-wise, the Beluga liner, along with a bunch of small ships called ship launch fighters that NPCs and yourself could pilot, which led us into the next update. While very buggy and somewhat broken, both planetary landings and engineers were still incredible attention grabbers. However, even in comparison, 2017 would be hell of a year. First, the 2.3 Commanders update. This brought Multicrew, the last feature that was actually promised for the pre-order bullshit that was the Horizon's Season Pass. It granted the players ability to join their friends on board with ships at multiple seats, giving them access to turreted weapons as well as ability to pilot the ship-launched fighters.
So that I could also drive their SRV, right?
No.
Wait, what? Oh, well, at least then multi-crew ships can join wings, allowing up to 12 people to play together, right? No. Either choose multi-crew or wings. Choose one. Then what the fuck is the point of using multi-crew ships instead of another person in a ship that has way more weapons, cargo space, and more? Every multi-crew member adds 1 energy pip to ship systems. Are you now taking the piss?
Yeah, even today, nothing has changed. Though you finally can drive your friend's SRV as part of Odyssey. It's just that your friend first has to launch the SRV himself. Bottom line is, it seems the developers simply took the code of Wings and copied it onto SRV system, as well as multi-crew system, which makes them incompatible since you can't have Wing system inside of a Wing system. Now, rumor has it, the code was so far fucked at this point that multi-crew in particular was the main reason why Horizon's season took over 2 years, plus the Beyond series, to deliver all of its content. Oh, and speaking of that, remember me saying that the whole pre-order update bullshit called Seasons would come back and bite Frontier in the ass? Yeah, here it is. The year 1, long over and only 2 mostly working feature updates delivered while Commanders was so broken, and funnily enough, remains broken to this day that no one wanted or wants to use it. Oh, and the fact that it's objectively shittier than having regular Wing does not help. But whatever, you got the hold of me, a character face creator. Woo! But no, seriously, at least players got to play with the Type 10 and Dolphin that year, the 2 new ships.
Why the fuck a ship needs a spoiler?
As the last update, the return would see the titular alien bad guys rumored for years to appear, decided to appear.
Warning, hyperspace contact unstable.
This in-engine cinematic-like event would have no gameplay, but it sure as fuck looked really cool. Later it would be replaced by a playable event, but it would also lose dread and atmosphere alongside it. What a shame that was. Now, at first when these Stargoids appeared, they were indestructible, making them pretty cool to look at, but kinda pointless. However, very soon the prototype weapons were handed to the players, and this would turn into a raid boss-like gameplay, just to kill one Goid. Developers who designed this PvE gameplay truly have to be commended, as it is very hard, even to seasoned players, yet it felt and was fair at the same time. I often make comparisons to something like Dark Souls bosses, and yes, that's how good it was, and to this day still is. 2017 would also be the first and only time when Frontier would host their own convention, the Frontier Expo. For me, this would be the second time I visit the UK, and for the community of Elite Dangerous, this would be the first time they would get to see me in the wild, which is where this picture comes from, by the way. Oh, and if you wonder why there's always weird faces when the Yamiks picture is being taken, I mean, why not? It's a silly picture, right? Also, I got to meet so many of my fellow creators, some of which who are still making content today, and some that have passed on. Miss you, Plater, man. Hell, I even managed to chat with Sandro for a little bit, you know, the lead game designer at the time. Even got to see Braben, but he was talking with some folks, so I left him alone. This would be the high point for Frontier as a company, both in financials and overall popularity. Due to this meteoric rise thanks to Elite popularity and genuine success of their freshly released Planet Coaster, Frontier wanted to expand hard, and in following years, being a self-published company, they decided to become a publisher as well. Yeah, that would turn out to be an incredibly bad decision. Anyways, during Frontier Expo, Elite also got a few announcements, and while sitting in VIP lounge right beside my fellow creators Obsidian Ant and DJ Truthsayer, Elite gets an announcement for squadrons and fleet carriers to go along with them.
To introduce a new organisational structure for playgroups that we're calling squadrons. So, So, squadrons are, you're going to be able to create your own squadron. We're going to give you the tools to manage the membership of it.
With literally one picture to show off and confusing words stumbling out of developers' mouths, this was beyond even Star Citizen vague. But one thing was clear. Squadrons, whatever the fuck player grouping thing it was supposed to be conjoined with fleet carriers. Whatever the fuck those were supposed to be. This might be important later. However, the 2.4 releasing about a month ago, Horizons is done, in the biggest possible quotes I could find. So, what's next?
Oh, and I found rather hilarious snippets that you may find also rather amusing.
What types of SRV will be released over the course of Season 2? And don't worry if you can't say anything.
So I think I don't know offhand. The first variants will actually be quite similar to the SRV, but just variants of it, and there will be others to come down the line.
That's really cool. Will they, as far as you imagine, I don't want to go into too much detail if I can't, but will they just handle differently and things like that rather than
details to be sorted and also do different things.
Great.
Oh, and I found this too!
When will we see Asteroid Station?
We don't have a time for them. They're currently hoping to do them at the back end of Season 2, but...
We're going to call this new series Beyond. There it is. As promised, an amazing...
Yeah, don't be fooled by the generosity of calling it a free content update, season whatever. These, for the most part, were leftovers from Horizons days, and boy, did they feel like it. But we'll get to that. But what about Frontier? The scammy pre-ordering of unknown content seasons have truly failed as a marketing ploy. So what do? I guess we'll fall back to microtransactions, selling crappy skins and ship kits for jacked up prices. Yeah, that seems to work with naive masses. And for a long while, this would be how Elite, beyond just game sales, would push its monetization. However, bright was the community side of things, as Drew Vagar, a fan of the series and a professional writer, got to write a story that would be counted as canon. I think. Hold on, do they still count it as canon or did they take it out? Well, ask Drew, please. Either way, it was a community event to bring a certain character from point A to point B, and whatever would happen in between would be counted as canon in the book. And boy, was there organization, information, disinformation, all sorts of things, which culminated in this.
Salome has left the building. Woo, get him out of here!
Is it over?
RIP!
And I took part while doing pretty much nothing, and yet it was the most viewed stream I've got to date. There was drama, factions all around everything. And yet somehow Frontier barely did anything to help it or even acknowledge these days. It's kinda sad, frankly. The whole 2018 would consist of nothing but Horizons leftovers, otherwise known as the Beyond series. The first update would release on time, introducing a ship named Chieftain, and more importantly, improving planet tech with more vibrant and colorful designs. I mean, they were still very empty rocks with no proper mechanics to find anything interesting on them, but hey, they were prettier. Then the dreaded crime and punishment system got redesigned into a worse version, and I dare you to tell me otherwise. Engineering would also mercifully be redesigned from a Gambletron where each update roll of the dice would not necessarily produce anything better than the last time, into a more progressive system, with of course more power creep. We also get Galnet Audio, the pre-AI era audio readouts of in-game news. A cool but ultimately kinda useless feature, which I still appreciate. And then we get wing missions, another travesty of a feature. So let me explain. It's just a normal mission with the ability to share it with a friend so you can complete it together. Cool. The rewards and the task requirements are increased, so you do more and also get more as a reward. Okay, cool! However, the reward does not scale with the wing, meaning that everyone gets the same reward no matter how big their contribution or how big the wing is. See, the obvious problem with these wing missions, which I complained about it to face to a developer who apparently worked on them, was that the missions expect 4 players and no less, for the rewards to be just as good as normal missions. That extra money that missing wingmates would get do not get distributed to the rest of you. Fuck you! This design just... What kind of an idiot? Oh, and then there's this.
But one of the great things that we're looking at adding into this is not only will these people be progressing the kind of global narrative of Elite, we're now going to be unlocking a personal narrative when you go into these things. So I think we've got some images of some of the sort of technologies that you may well be able to tantalizing peek at some of the things you might be unlocking in these new personal narratives that we're bringing to Elite.
I mocked and belittled this idea and marketing slogan of personal narrative so much that it became a meme. So you're welcome, community. See, the reason I did it was because developers tried to lie to all of us. The so-called personal narrative was nothing more than just tech brokers with their unlocks. And that is what developers call personal narrative? Oh, fuck you! And you know, it kinda gets really funny when developers themselves actually start using that term without knowing why I mocked it and why it's a joke now. Next up, 3.1. You get 2 new ships, Challenger and Crate 2, with a cool new trailer that to this day implies walkable ship interiors and space legs, before we even knew that they were working on Odyssey. Now this was a Star Citizen level of misleading bullshit, and honestly I thought that Elite was above that at the time. But beyond that, that was about it. 3.1, a new ship called Crusader and a bunch of cool alien hybrid fighters, which to date are the only hybrid ships, despite Crate Phantom looking like one. A few more small things, but again, not much else. And at this point, the year was starting to drag on quite a bit. However, 3.3, new ships, Crate Phantom and Mamba gets added. But more importantly, squadrons! So this is how Frontier thought guild system looked like and would work. Maximum of 500 members, no real function beyond just sharing bookmarks, and broken! So broken that even today you can make it crash the game if you accept too many new players at once. This feature more than most proved to me that developers who were working on the game never played their own game. Otherwise they would know the tight-knit community that created its own player groups, and the groups were sure as shit larger than 500 members. Or that they needed more functionality than fucking bookmarks! Let alone to work in the first fucking place! Yep, that didn't take long. Fucking piece of shit still broken. Okay, Yamiks, calm. Yamiks, calm. So, this feature even now feels like a massive spit in the community's face and its efforts to create groups, guilds, outfits, and the like. Also, it's funny that my Dead Horse squadron was the first to hit 500 player limit right away, to prove this fucking point, so I'll just leave it at that. Fuck whoever worked on this half-assed piece of shit! On the other hand, really impactful and more importantly fun improvements were given to mining gameplay, adding 3 new subtypes of gameplay along with some questionable tools. While exploration also got the same treatment. Even if those changes didn't take that much time to develop or implement, they were by far one of the best improvements of the game since engineering or planet tech. That's how great they were, and to date remain, so good job! However, this would mark the last time a big update for Elite would release for a long time. Hold on, what about the fleet carriers? Yeah, about that. They got delayed a couple of times. Then 2019. Nothing. Fucking nothing happened this year. It really felt like the game was put on a maintenance phase for real. And who could blame you for thinking that? The launch of the game was incredible in 2014, but every update after release of Horizons got smaller and poorer in quality and coding. That within those 3 years, with beyond finishing it off, Elite felt like it ran its course entirely thanks to the utter ineptitude of the development team. Wait, no. They remade tutorials this year. Yay! Oh, fuck me. The only hope was that Frontier hunkered down completely and behind the scenes were working on something groundbreaking. And as it happens, around this time, on 4chan of all the wretched places, very curious and more so precise leak was spotted. Project Watson, space legs, planet building? No, can't be that Frontier is working on that during this year. 2020, same shit, different year. The pandemic was in full swing by now and the progress on Elites felt slower and slower. But with the delayed fleet carriers, at least people had something to look forward to. However,
because as it stands right now, it's an invulnerable piece of space flotsam that you get to land on, and that's about it. I can't really judge its performance because it doesn't really do much of anything.
Let's then beat the dead horse. In the first beta, these charcoal fucks tipped their hand and revealed how out of touch they are by filling the fleet carrier with sunk cost mechanics in a form of a weekly rent, upkeep, and selling penalties according to the distance from the nearest carrier selling, a fucking depreciation. Yes, the longer you would have the fleet carrier in your possession, the less it would refund if you wanted to sell it or was forced to sell due to huge debt. And thus the loop of the sunk cost was created.
Yeah, it was bad, like really, really bad. For more detail on just how useless and manipulative these shitty mega space cows are, I'll have my review down below. Now, sure, Squadrons bombed because you developers didn't seem to know what the hell you were making, but then to also rip out the fleet carriers and then give it to everyone for a bullshit price, let alone the bullshit utilities and usability? No, thank you. However, the general depressive tone was immediately turned around with the announcement of Odyssey expansion. The long-rumored and hinted and implied space legs are finally going to be added to the game, matching what Star Citizen and No Man's Sky were able to accomplish, giving Elite Dangerous a lot more intimate and even further immersive feel to the universe, your ship, and much, much more. It truly looked like a potential renaissance and rejuvenation for the whole game. I seriously cannot emphasize just what kind of a not golden but diamond opportunity Frontier had in their hands with space legs. No wonder that on launch it beat the previous Steam records for Horizon set in 2015. But we'll get to that. Oh, and on the bright side, the base game and Horizons got merged together at this point, which was only a good thing. 2021, lead up to release of Odyssey is fronted by early alpha access, which is nothing more than a pee-pee-poo-poo version. No, honestly, the word alpha or beta has lost all meaning in game development space today. And with Odyssey, that's exactly what it was. The same game, just with limited features and unfinished optimization for suckers who bought into the FOMO bullshit. It's just disgusting marketing that as gamers we're all too familiar with, sadly. However, before all that, I was making a stink as well. Being a media member, I thought, well, hell, might as well ask for a review copy if Frontier is still willing. They were not. Now, that would have been fine if they simply said, no review copy for Yamiks, piss off. And that's fair, even without the explanation why. However, the answer I got, well, was basically bullshit. And I rightfully criticized the bullshit. Again, not because I got denied the review copy. Now granted, after making the stink, Frontier did apologize for the bullshit and simply stated, Yamiks, you ain't getting a review copy. And now then, that was fine. But as for the Odyssey itself, it was bad. So bad, it nearly killed the game. In Steam charts, you can see this very result. The sky-high player numbers followed by immediate and catastrophic plummeting to the levels below even 2019, when you literally had nothing worthy of note released. The damn expansion was so bad that it did negative numbers. Well, except for the income and sales, I guess. Yet the negative result of Odyssey was only one of the major fuck-ups of the company that year. The stock price for Frontier rapidly fell after this, along with mismanaged publishing arm and failing games both released and published. But what about Odyssey? What did it fail to do? Well, honestly, nearly everything. On the good side, now you can land on light atmospheric planets.
Back in the day, developers, as Horizons came out, unlocked approximately 51% of the galaxy's planets to land on. After what felt like decades, we get the first unlocked things ever. Well, I guess light atmospheric planets is all we're gonna get now. And they make up extra 5% of existing planets. So 56% it is.
Oh, and here's a fun rabbit hole. As I went on to check my sources and information, I didn't find anything except for Wikipedia, which states 20% of light atmospheric planets, which is kind of weird. Because honestly speaking, I would trust my hypercritical far more than a Wikipedia, which doesn't even quote sources. Then again, neither do I, so eh. And then Wikipedia gets even weirder, quoting 61% of the total galaxy is landable, which would mean that Horizon's part is 41%, unlike my stated previously 51%. Now, I don't know which one you're gonna trust more, but I certainly would trust myself more. Then again, neither one of us quotes any fucking sources, so thanks, Frontier. But hey, they added new plants on those planets, which look pretty cool. Yet the gameplay, well, that's where all the problems stemmed from. First, exploration. It was nothing but this. Later, developers removed the reaction-based minigame after a massive outcry from the players. So now exploration got nothing more than standing around and looking at the plant. On-foot trading does not exist, neither does on-foot mining, no new ships or SRVs. About 90% of the gameplay effort seemed to be placed on the shooter gameplay. And even that was nothing more than a pathetic first-year student asset flip level. Hell, I analyzed it in depth, so do check it out if you want a full picture. So what was left? Frankly, very little. And all that for $50. Oh, and did I forget to mention that Odyssey was unoptimized as fuck?
Basically, Odyssey got released. No, not broken, but unfinished. That the crucial step of development, the very last thing you performed, the optimization, was completely skipped, so that Frontier arguably could release this thing for their shit fiscal year. Now for the next 6 months, they will finish the initial development. I mean, people complain about fixing the game, but the thing is, how can you fix something when it's not been developed in the first place?
Yeah, I investigated that in a very careful detail, links down below. But in short, in the first year, the performance didn't come even close to what they advertised. And guess what? Even to this day, still doesn't. So basically, it was clearly rushed, content devoid, and overly simplistic and bastardized attempt at bringing first-person gameplay to Elite for full game price. It wasn't just pathetic, but disastrous. Oh, and they didn't even include ship interiors either.
Funny that some of the PR team tried to pivot this lack of interior walking feature with this kind of argument.
We understand some people may have wanted to have the full ship interiors, but I will go back to what we've already discussed. Everything done with Odyssey is purely based around longevity of gameplay and stuff like the sheer scale of these ships to sort of. It would be fun, in my opinion, and I'm happy to be at odds with different people in the chat, which I'm sure I will be. It would be fun to run up the steps the first 5, 6, 7 times, but then after you've done that 1,000 times, you're probably going to be a little bit more, I just need to get into my ship. And especially if you are leaving someplace in a hurry in a big ship, you probably wouldn't want to be spending 10 minutes running down the corridors as people are laying into your ship. So a lot of this stuff is done to enhance the gameplay. And to focus on really those core gameplay loops which we spoke about. But for me, I think it's something I'm used to, and it's there. You've seen it now.
Back then, there was still hope to bring this unoptimized, unfinished mess to the consoles in acceptable state, and so for the remainder of the year, the game would get update after update just to finish development in the first place. However, console release due to this had to be postponed till next year. In fact, developers also wanted to converge Horizon's, now the base game, with the Odyssey at a later point as well, since the base game players would not be able to play together with the people with Odyssey version, nor even see each other in the common space. Then on top there was also the pre-Odyssey graphics version of the game, that also was not able to play with either one of them, further splitting the player base between versions. And let me spoil a conclusion here, to date this also is not accomplished either. 2022. Things start off where they left off. Developers slowing down in their updates trying to improve performance, but never hitting that mark of their own advertised PC machine specs. Trust me, I checked. Another massive disappointment came about 9 months after the launch of Odyssey. The console delay would be extended to forever. Yup, this is where Frontier completely gives up on developing and only maintaining the console codebase altogether. No Odyssey, nor its graphics, no new ships, items or events that take place on PC. That's it. And this even further disillusioned those few leftover fans excited for the release of a whole market segment. And console fanbase was so active that even today I get F's in the comments from disappointed peasant brothers and sisters, and trust me, I feel you, I get it. It sucks. Oh, but remember that leak from 2019? It said that Project Watson, now named Odyssey, also would have base building? Well, that's kinda weird. Everything else was spot on, but this feature was missing? At the time I was guessing that Frontier would sort out the performance a little, and then the planned post-release content would start dropping, including base building. But no! In fact, this year got so bleak that most of the content creators left the community, either to other games like Star Citizen or No Man's Sky, or completely stopped creating, leaving only like, what, 3 or 4 bigger one of us checking in on the game from time to time? Hell, even Elite Dangerous Wiki seemed to have given up on updating its info. That's how grim it got. Oh, but hey guys, on the bright side, for Odyssey only, Frontier released a new vehicle, the second SRV, Scorpion. Oh, wow, such amazeballs. I mean, at this point, what even is the point? Then a planetary explosion with Targoid green colors. Holy shit, was this the post-release narrative kicking in? Well, whatever it was exciting for a few days, and those cinematics were notably very lower quality than the studio was known for, it was still something. Oh, and this was the year that Braben would step down as the CEO of the company. This might be important later. 2023 started the road to some kind of recovery as the narrative event of Titans, the Targoid motherships, starting to appear, and granted, they looked cool as fuck. I'm happy that at least alien threat was still being treated with seriousness and brevity. However, we were still yet to do anything with them, other than fly around and get space aids. Still, there was a narrative and events being pushed by someone within the leftover development team, and let me outright praise the person or team who spearheaded this Titan stuff. You might have saved the lead from going at that point into maintenance phase. Now, since nothing of real note took place during this year other than build-up for the Titan fighting, let me dispel a couple of stupid notions. Spacelegs, the FPS or the first-person walking shooting module for the game, was the absolute correct decision to take the game in. See, Elite started from the grand scale. The galaxy was proc-gen created, so was the star systems and planets. Then it took it down to the scale of ships and stations. After that, with Horizons, we narrow our field of view with SRVs on planets and planet surface landings. And finally, with Spacelegs, the ability to embody your own character fully. Which is kind of opposite what Star Citizen does, funnily enough. Regardless, the first-person perspective is capable of delivering not only gameplay that everyone is familiar with, allowing even normies to pick up and play a space sim, but more importantly, it further drives that initial experience and immersion that Elite succeeded in creating in 2014. Remember that without Spaceship Cockpit, without that amazing in-game space HUD, or even seeing your own character in the chair, none of the immersive feelings would translate as well as they did back then. So first-person mode would have been a full extension to that experience and immersion, let alone gameplay. So yeah, it was the right direction. However, execution was slapdash pathetic and careless, which is why it failed. Oh, and here's a conjecture. Development of Spacelegs probably restarted about twice in the whole production of these 12 years. From what we hear and what we can easily extrapolate, the original Spacelegs that the Braben and the team tried to imply and hint at so much back in the day in those Kickstarter days were completely different beasts from what we got. Then the second iteration was supposed to launch at the end of Horizons, but yeah, we know how that season worked out. And the third version was only started at the end of Beyond, at the start of the maintenance phase of year 2019. So yeah, 2, maybe 3 years for what Odyssey released? Well, oddly makes sense now, doesn't it? However, this is really nothing more than just a rumor, right? But if you have actual sources, or you are a source, feel free to contact me through email. I'd love to hear what went on behind the scenes. And so we come to 2024, and what a year this was. The first Titan finally got killed off, and all the other ones following except for one in the following months. And that was pretty cool, though only players with very modified ships usually took part in it, so the event was more or less for long-term players than everyone. So what most people ended up doing was the same thing with every other Elite Dangerous event. Watched it on YouTube. A bit of a shame that this is a trend for the game, but do you remember my rant about story and presentation? Yeah, this is the result of it. Then around April, Elite Dangerous announces changes. The game will be finally receiving new ships!
You know, were we going to get a new ship in Elite Dangerous? Yeah, you are. I think we've given you a little bit to talk about and speculate on for Elite Dangerous. I'm really pleased, and as a fan, as a player, just for the community and everyone, that is the news that I could give you today. And there might be a little bit more later on, but that's for me to know and you to find out.
But only people who purchase these ships for real money not only get to play with them right away, but also get no rebuys. Everyone else get to wait 3 months until the ships are given to the rest of the plebeian. Yeah, Elite Dangerous goes more pay to win. Now, I say more because granted, there was a little bit of that during Kickstarter days, with Cobra 4, Horizons launch, and so on and so forth. And though I didn't like it, at least I could understand it. But today, this bullshit? No. And so I voiced my displeasure. And since then, I've been keeping off Elite Dangerous. Of course, today is an exception, and I will return. But for now, I want to see if these manipulative and disgusting tactics to generate money actually would pay off. Sadly, no matter what outcome, there is no positive result in all of it. And of course, I will cover it when the time comes. On the other hand, just recently released and years delayed, PowerPlay 2.0 sees the light of the day. With a small but justified surprise, the game gains a big boost in Steam charts alone because of this, as well as on Google Trends. No buying ships, no exploitative bullshit, just an all-round positive update, which honestly should have been engineering, but whatever, I'm splitting hairs. Point being, the pay-to-win bullshit was already looking like a complete failure compared to genuine and decent, not even new content, just better content even when remade. Even if it is more grind, it still is better than what it replaced, and I'm happy to see that improvement succeed. In fact, this is the first real bump in player numbers since the failure of Odyssey, and those few devs who worked on it, nice job. Like I've said time and time again, I'm willing to spend $100 or more on a good game or expansion, and if Odyssey was good, well developed, even with not that much content in it, I would prefer to pay for that and support the dev team than let them resort to manipulative bullshit like FOMO and pay to win. Like I said before, I'm keeping off Elite for the time being, and where do you go now is really up to you. And looking from things, the base building is finally, after 3 years, seeing the light of day as well. So that leak from 2019 was actually 100% correct, and boy oh boy was Odyssey cut down for this to take 3 years. Well, but the update, the feature is not yet out, so it's hard to tell whether or not it's good or bad at all. And so, these were the 10 years of Elite Dangerous. I honestly wasn't quite sure until I laid it all out year by year, but boy, does Elite take a sharp decline in quality, coding, execution, and vision after the first 2 years of a release. Honestly speaking, I didn't want to make such a somber tale, but it really does feel like leaders and managers of the company didn't seem to know what to do with the golden nugget, while the people who created the game originally in those 2 years knew precisely to a pinpoint precision what to do with it. It's such a stark contrast, it's basically a Grand Canyon. It really is genuinely amazing work that the original Elite from 2014 managed to accomplish that holds together this game even to date. Sure, not like all of the additions to the game have been sleeping on laurels completely, most notably the planet landings and the first-person perspective. However, they do feel quite empty and pointless when there's very little to do on them other than grinding for the power creep engineering. And so, some other features also have become a massive improvement for the game, like the exploration and mining. Hell, even the engineering as an idea is a fantastic one, to produce 100 times more builds, so you can truly customize your favorite ships. And oh boy, did the game really need player groups in-game. Guilds, outfits, or squadrons. But yeah, we know how well that went. And in spite of all the shortcomings and developer incompetence, and yes, there is no other better word for it, but incompetence in handling this genuine diamond from 2014, we are still here. And you know, I can easily say that you guys, my dear viewers, community members of Elite Dangerous, PlanetSide, or hell, even just an occasional viewer from elsewhere, you guys changed my life, and for that I'm immensely grateful. The great support over the Patreon has been indispensable, so if you too want to drop a dead horse for my dead horse beatings, I honestly can't thank you enough. But even so, just a view itself really matters a lot, so thank you. And also, thank you has to be said to the original dev team, who created in those first 2 years something amazing that still holds up. Sometimes even in spite of all the other later additions. And so we also must encourage the few leftover developers working on Elite right now. Stop the bullshit exploitation of the community with pay to win. And look at Powerplay 2. You did a nice job and people immediately responded for it. For a feature that wasn't even new, just simply better. People want better gameplay, not new toys. Although those are also nice when they're not pay to win. And I repeat, I myself would buy more copies of Odyssey if it meant it was well developed. Good quality gameplay that does not insult the audience. The community, fandom is there and willing, ever waiting because of just how good initial game and its immersion, experience still is. But as for you, my dear viewer, well, thank you for taking the journey with me. And as usual, thank you for watching, and evermore thank you for supporting. This has been like no other, and continues to be, so let's see what's next.